The Miz is one of the most unique WWE superstars of the modern era. He went from being a reality TV star to one of the most consistent performers in WWE. His journey from being an outsider who wasn't respected in the locker room to becoming a WWE champion should have been a story of inspiration, but instead, it became an example of how WWE failed to capitalize on a true underdog story. One of the biggest problems WWE had with The Miz was their inability to recognize and sustain his main event potential. The Miz's initial rise to the top of WWE in 2010 was met with resistance, both internally and from fans. He was never seen as a legitimate top guy despite his dedication, mic skills, and ability to generate heat. When he won the WWE Championship by cashing in Money in the Bank on Randy Orton, it was a moment that should have defined a new era, but WWE failed him almost immediately. Instead of building The Miz as a strong, credible champion, WWE positioned him as a cowardly heel who could barely retain his title without outside interference. His WrestleMania 27 main event against John Cena should have been a crowning achievement, but WWE only cared about using that match to further the rivalry between Cena and The Rock. The Miz was a background figure in his own championship match, and despite retaining the title, he was never truly elevated to the level of a serious main eventer. WWE's booking of The Miz after his title reign further cemented their failure to see his value. He was relegated to mid-card status almost immediately, feuding for secondary titles instead of remaining in the world title picture. This devaluation made it seem like his championship run was an accident rather than a legitimate push. The Miz should have been allowed to evolve into a stronger character, but instead, he was treated like an afterthought. One of the worst aspects of WWE's treatment of The Miz has been their tendency to use him as a stepping stone for other stars, rather than building him as a top guy in his own right. He was constantly put in situations where he would be humiliated to put over other talent, whether it was being crushed by Brock Lesnar in a squash match or being used to make babyfaces look strong. The Miz was never booked with the same level of care as other top stars. Even when The Miz reinvented himself in 2016 with his incredible Intercontinental Championship run, WWE refused to give him a serious world title push. His work during that time was some of the best in his career, cutting passionate promos and bringing prestige back to the title. His talking smack promo on Daniel Bryan remains one of the most legendary moments in WWE history. That promo should have been a turning point for The Miz, a moment where WWE recognized his star power and finally pushed him back into the main event scene. Instead, they let the momentum fade and did nothing with him. When WWE did eventually put The Miz back in the world title picture in 2021, it was another disaster. He won the WWE Championship again by cashing in Money in the Bank, but this time, WWE didn't even pretend to take him seriously. He lost the title just 8 days later to Bobby Lashley, in a match that made him look like a complete joke. WWE used him as a placeholder champion to transition the title to someone else, proving once again that they never saw The Miz as a legitimate top star. Beyond poor booking, WWE also consistently failed to market The Miz as one of their top attractions. Despite being one of the best talkers in the business and having mainstream appeal, WWE rarely positioned him as a face of the company. He was always treated as a secondary act rather than one of WWE's most valuable assets. Even when he carried the company on his back during certain periods, WWE never rewarded him with the push he deserved. The Miz's credibility also suffered from WWE's inconsistent writing. They often portrayed him as a joke, using him in comedy segments that undermined his legitimacy. While The Miz is naturally charismatic and can thrive in entertainment-driven storylines, WWE went too far in making him a comedic character rather than a serious competitor. When a superstar is constantly made to look weak, it becomes difficult for fans to see them as a credible threat in the main event scene. Another way WWE ruined The Miz was by never allowing him to win major matches against top-tier opponents cleanly. Throughout his career, The Miz has rarely been booked to defeat big names without outside interference or cheap tactics. This prevented him from being viewed as a true main eventer and kept him stuck in the mid-card. Even when The Miz won big matches, it was often done in a way that made him look undeserving rather than dominant. The Miz's credibility also suffered from WWE's inconsistent writing. They often portrayed him as a joke, using him in comedy segments that undermined his legitimacy. While The Miz is naturally charismatic and can thrive in entertainment-driven storylines, WWE went too far in making him a comedic character rather than a serious competitor. When a superstar is constantly made to look weak, it becomes difficult for fans to see them as a credible threat in the main event scene. Another way WWE ruined The Miz was by never allowing him to win major matches against top-tier opponents cleanly. Throughout his career, The Miz has rarely been booked to defeat big names without outside interference or cheap tactics. This prevented him from being viewed as a true main eventer and kept him stuck in the mid-card. Even when The Miz won big matches, it was often done in a way that made him look undeserving rather than dominant. The Miz should have been one of WWE's greatest long-term success stories. He had all the tools: charisma, in-ring skills, dedication, and the ability to reinvent himself. But WWE continuously refused to invest in him at the level he deserved. He was always seen as a temporary attraction rather than a pillar of the company. This mindset ultimately held The Miz back from reaching his full potential. One of the biggest issues WWE has had with The Miz is their unwillingness to present him as a credible threat in the main event scene. Whenever he has been given the opportunity to hold a top championship, he has either been overshadowed by bigger stars or booked as a weak, cowardly champion. His first WWE Championship reign in 2010 to 2011 is a prime example. Instead of being positioned as a dominant champion, The Miz was constantly portrayed as someone who could only win with interference or underhanded tactics. While this can work for a heel in the short term, it ultimately devalues the champion and makes them look like an afterthought. His entire reign felt like a setup for bigger names, as John Cena and The Rock's looming WrestleMania program took center stage. Even when The Miz was given the honor of main eventing WrestleMania 27, he was treated as a supporting character in his own championship defense. The build-up to the match was more focused on the rivalry between Cena and The Rock, rather than Miz's role as champion. This meant that when he did retain the title, it felt like a fluke rather than a star-making moment. He never gained the momentum that should have come with such a massive win, and WWE quickly moved on from him as a main eventer. Within months, he was back in the mid-card, and his title reign was treated as an afterthought. Another major problem with how WWE has handled The Miz is their tendency to use him as a stepping stone for other stars, rather than treating him as a legitimate star himself. Time and time again, he has been used to put over wrestlers WWE actually sees as top stars, but they rarely return the favor by giving him meaningful wins. When he feuded with Roman Reigns in 2017 to 2018, he was largely positioned as a transitional champion, holding the Intercontinental title until WWE was ready to put it on Reigns. Despite The Miz doing excellent work as a heel and elevating the IC title, his loss to Reigns felt inevitable, and only served to boost Reigns rather than give Miz any credibility. Similarly, The Miz was used as an afterthought in Daniel Bryan's comeback story in 2018. Their long-standing feud was one of the most personal and well-built storylines WWE had, dating back to their NXT days and the infamous Talking Smack promo where The Miz cut one of the best promos of his career. Fans were heavily invested in seeing these two finally clash in a major match, but when WWE finally booked it, they rushed through the feud with little care. Bryan defeated The Miz relatively easily, and The Miz never got a satisfying follow-up, making the entire program feel like a waste of the years of build-up. One of the clearest signs that WWE never truly believed in The Miz as a top guy was how they treated him after he won the WWE Championship for a second time in 2021. His Money in the Bank cash-in on Drew McIntyre was a nice moment, but it was immediately clear that WWE had no intention of giving him a real run with the title. Just 2 weeks later, he was squashed by Bobby Lashley in one of the most one-sided championship matches in recent memory. This reign was not designed to elevate Miz, but rather to serve as a quick transition to get the title on Lashley. While short reigns aren't always a bad thing, WWE's booking of Miz during this time made it clear that they saw him as a joke rather than a serious champion. Another glaring issue has been WWE's insistence on treating The Miz as a comedy act rather than a legitimate competitor. While he is undoubtedly skilled at playing an entertaining heel, WWE has leaned too heavily into making him the butt of jokes rather than allowing him to be taken seriously. His partnerships with celebrities and his involvement in segments like the Zombie match at WrestleMania Backlash 2021 have made it hard for fans to see him as a credible contender. WWE often books him in ridiculous situations, like his matches against Logan Paul, where he is portrayed as an outmatched veteran rather than a savvy competitor. Additionally, WWE has consistently passed over The Miz in favor of other stars, even when he has proven himself as one of their most reliable performers. Despite being one of the best talkers in the company and a consistently entertaining presence, He has never been given the same long-term investment as other top names. Even during periods when he was delivering some of his best work, such as his run as Intercontinental Champion, from 2016 to 2018, WWE refused to elevate him beyond the mid-card. His promos and matches during this time were some of the best of his career, yet he was never given a sustained push toward the world title. Instead, WWE continued to prioritize part-time stars and established names over him. The Miz has also suffered from WWE's tendency to rely on nostalgia rather than building new stars. Whenever a legend returns, Miz is often one of the first people WWE uses to put them over. Whether it's The Rock humiliating him in a promo, Edge making his return at Miz's expense, or even Shane McMahon beating him at WrestleMania 35, Miz is frequently positioned as the guy WWE sacrifices to make returning stars look strong. While this role can be valuable, it has also severely damaged his credibility because it shows that WWE never sees him as someone who needs to be protected. Another key issue is that WWE has never allowed The Miz to evolve beyond a certain point. While many of the biggest stars in WWE history have been allowed to change and adapt their characters over time, The Miz has largely remained the same cocky heel for over a decade. This lack of evolution has prevented him from reaching the next level, as WWE seems content to keep him in the same spot year after year. Even when he briefly turned face in 2013, the company never fully committed to the change, and he was quickly turned back into a heel without ever being given a real opportunity to see if a face run could work. Even in terms of in-ring credibility, WWE has never fully committed to making Miz look like a real threat. While he is more than capable of putting on great matches, WWE rarely allows him to have decisive wins against top stars. Instead, he is frequently booked to rely on distractions, interference, or cheap tactics to win, which makes it difficult for fans to see him as a legitimate main eventer. When top stars like AJ Styles, Seth Rollins, or Roman Reigns get clean victories over Miz, it reinforces the idea that he is not on their level. Even in recent years, WWE has continued to waste the Miz's talent. Instead of using him to elevate the world title scene, they have relegated him to hosting Miz TV segments and feuding in mid-card feuds that don't matter. While The Miz remains a valuable asset, WWE has ensured that he will never be seen as one of their greatest stars, despite all the work he has put into making himself one of the best performers in the industry.